All right. Welcome to the Love and Freedom Show. I'm your host, Kyle Kemper, and today I've got a very special guest, BJ Dichter. Welcome, BJ.
Hey, dude, it's good to see you.
Great to see you too, man. Just want to say, super grateful to be able to share this space with you in this moment of time. And
Oh, thanks, man.
yeah, so on the show today, we've got about half an hour until I got a hard stop and I got to run because it's date day with my beautiful wife who has um, been planning for this. So it's very exciting. But tell me, how are you doing
Yeah.
today?
I'm good. I am, unfortunately, for the first time in my life, I was relieved to get out of Canada, which is sad. But, I'm down here getting ready for the Bitcoin conference in Miami in the beginning of April, which is something that you and I connected on, which was, our fascination. And as we've delved into crypto and Bitcoin and stuff all together. And it was nice to see we had so much overlap in terms of some things in politics and our love for freedom and decentralized financing and what I think is going to be once we get over this difficult period the world is in right now. I do believe we are on the cusp of a new golden age, an enlightenment 2.0, if you will. And I think Bitcoin is going to play a big part in that, in educating people in the importance of freedom. And it was really nice when we spoke a couple of weeks ago for the first time to see that we had a lot of common ideas and philosophical worldviews. So thanks for having me, man.
Hey, my pleasure. And I mean, I just want to also say I'm super grateful. I really enjoyed, our discussion as well. And one of our intentions was, okay, let's come together and let's share some of this, because in this, new age that is dawning, it's really important for us as, I don't know, innovators, entrepreneurs, thought leaders, creators to start broadcasting, because I think based on what's transpired in the last month or years or really frankly decades has
Yeah.
been a massive centralization of journalism, which traditionally was investigative and objective, and it's turned into more of kind of a propagandistic, subjective, um, yeah, medium channel program.
Yeah. Where should we start? Should we deal first with the? Let me ask you actually, because I don't really know. When did you get interested in Bitcoin, decentralized financing? Like, how did that all start? And then how did your family respond to it? Were they supportive, not supportive, or whatever?
Yeah, so I was a big fan of Ron Paul
Oh yeah,
and his End the Fed book, and calling out the central banks. And before that, the movie Zeitgeist really highlighted kind of the men behind the curtain and identified the central banks as kind of one of the cancers or parasites on civilization. So looked at alternatives and was kind of pessimistic before
yeah,
Bitcoin about the options, and then saw Bitcoin in 2011, dismissed it initially, didn't understand it, just
yep.
didn't click. 2 years of more and more impressions till finally someone walked into my restaurant and talked all about Bitcoin, and I had my light bulb moment and I never looked back. We installed a Bitcoin ATM in the restaurant. Within a month of doing that, I got a call from the Senate of Canada asking them if their senators who were part of the BTC committee, the Banking, Trade and Commerce Committee, would be able to come see how the machine worked. They'd been doing a
Hmm.
study, like a deep dive study on Bitcoin, for 7 months at that point. They'd never actually seen a Bitcoin transaction. So it's so
Yeah,
ridiculous. So then we ended up bringing it to the Senate and showing them how it worked and showing them actual how transactions worked. And, I think that was really enlightening. And that kind of cast me on my journey. As far as how my family saw it, yeah, I think it was kind of radical in
yeah,
terms of it's unknown. I think back in 2013, it was, really like, it was moving past kind of just the cypherpunks and into like, starting to permeate within the libertarian kind of circles, and starting to like expand outwards, but it was still really, small, and kind of fringe, if you will. So yeah, the family didn't, fully get it, but hey, I had crypto art. I was like, guys, here's crypto art, and I was giving everybody I could Bitcoin, back in the day, trying to set people up with wallets. So many people like, regretfully look back and shake themselves for losing the passwords and losing their seeds, etc.
Yeah.
And whatever, that is what it is. And then over time, it just kind of kept getting, stronger and stronger. And I know my father's like been really supportive of me in this whole journey, and he's been supportive of me in the entire kind of liberty kind of cause too, and everything that we're doing and speaking out. My brother Justin, he was of the the blockchain, not Bitcoin kind of camp. It was like, looking at kind of that side of things.
Okay.
But he was kind of, he was interested, but I like the same, like, I feel like his information sources are really kind of filtered too. So like, he's not able to come like drop in heavily at a, crypto conference.
Yeah. Well, I think that happens. I mean, I've seen that with Pardon the Noise. It'll go away in 30 seconds. That happens with a lot of people in politics. They do a moat forms around them, and it's not necessarily of their doing. It just, this is how political parties work, and this is part of the problem and the weakness. And it gets to a point where real information sometimes is just blocked from getting to many people who are elected representatives. It's funny. People have asked me through this whole period, oh, do you hate Justin Trudeau? I'm like, I don't know him. I don't know him personally. I very much disagree with his politics, and I have no problem teasing and making fun of him the same way I would, any sort of friends who do ridiculous things. But as a person, I have no idea, and it's interesting to hear that he is at least aware of blockchain and Bitcoin, and that you've gone so deep into this and have bit by the bug and gone down the rabbit hole. Whereas, other people, I guess they just don't have the time or the opportunity, which is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to help reach regular people and make them become aware of it. Because much like you said with your family, the reason I asked, I didn't tell any of my family. They think I'm crazy. They're like, oh, this is the next crazy thing you're into and whatever. And there was no point even bringing it up. And now we're finally in a world where I would say over the past maybe year, 18 months, when Bitcoin first had its massive parabolic run since 2017, that now people started talking about it again. It was on CNBC, so now I could finally talk about it and not be dismissed as being a weirdo computer guy. And then we had this convoy where the Bitcoin community came out and unified together and raised almost $1.2 million for the truckers. And that was the only money that some of the truckers were able to get, because the crew who ran that, they saw where the government was going before the government went hard cracking down and banning myself and other people from the banking sector, which is completely terrifying and ridiculous. At least those truckers who had been there for 3 weeks managed to get compensation. So in terms of a use of case example, I think it was brilliant. What do you think? What did you see?
I mean, I fully agree, and I mean, I've been a rabid evangelist for 9
For sure.
years now. Just sign up, try, and looking at different solutions, and I'll say the experience has gotten a lot better. And we wait for these kind of these moments, and these moments come along where it literally really proves the use case. And you lost your bank account, that was that's a fundamental kind of life.
My personal, my corporate, my lines of credit, my credit card, everything was blocked. just like that.
Still blocked?
No, it lasted for 7.5 days, almost 8 days.
Okay.
When the emergency measure was lifted, about 24 hours after that, I got my bank account. But it was weird. I went to order food for my friend who I was staying with after I left the hotel in the downtown area, and I thought the very least I could do is let me buy dinner and let's just hang out, turn off the world. We'll turn off Twitter and just hang out and watch a nerdy documentary or something, right? And I went to go use my Uber Eats to buy us dinner, and your credit card is declined over and over again. When I went to log on to my banking, to my TD, I started with my corporate account, and I logged in, and the entire transaction history vanished.
Oh.
It was as though I had so my bookkeeper couldn't reconcile any records, nothing, couldn't do any e-trans. There was a balance there, but that's it. It was crazy.
I mean, that just shows you, and this speaks to like the dangers of centralization. With
right.
one keystroke, you can be deleted. Like, you know, all of these records couldn't be deleted, or you can be, you know, restricted access from it. So, you know, again, this was a great opportunity. And so people like, you know, humans and societies, when challenged, like, you know, when someone tries to put up an obstacle or a roadblock, we figure out ways to go around them. And, you know, Bitcoin is one of these solutions that has been here, it works, and people have, you know, utilized it in Canada to raise, you know, a bunch of Bitcoin. And then now we see, like, you know, now all of a sudden it was like, oh, taboo to do it for the truckers, but and like the mainstream media got all angry for raising it for the truckers. But now they're all like cheering about raising it for Ukraine. Like, it's so bizarre, like this weird kind of like reflection. And then they go raise $50 million, like, you know, literally to purchase weapons to commit violence, whether you like it or not. Like, that's what's happening. And
don't you love how COVID was all about, you got to wear a mask because you got to protect one life. And now Ukraine, we have to arm militaries to start killing people from the same side. Like, what is going on?
And we need your money, little people. So, like, we're gonna crowdfund from you, even though we have, like, you know, access to the printer. So it's like, you know, they're always gonna come after your Bitcoin. People want your Bitcoin. It's liquid cash. People want the cash that you have. They want your Bitcoin too. So they're gonna find ways to pull them from you any way you can. But at the end of the day, like, I think a lot of truckers who weren't aware, who didn't think, like, you know, didn't really see the need for it, you know, got lit up on that. And then I think as well, all the people who supported via GoFundMe or Give Send Go as well, all of a sudden they're like, damn, like, you know, my bank accounts aren't as safe as I thought they were. So I should look at crypto. And I know I've gotten lots of messages about it. And I know, like, you know, some of the exchanges have seen a lot of activity in business. Edge Wallet down here in San Diego was like, you know, I guess the Canadian government was like, give us the names of your users. And they're like, no, no. Like,
did you see that response from Nunchuck to the Ontario court?
I didn't, but
it was Ted Cruz read it. It was hysterical. Basically said, we cannot block any of our users. That is by design. There's a reason. It was brilliant. It was,
and that was the same Edge Wallet said. They just like put a meme up saying no, and like, we can't. And even if we wouldn't if we could, but we can't. We don't know. We don't know.
That's right.
Like, you know, Bitcoin address, isn't differentiated between, you know, it doesn't know a border. It doesn't know a political party. It doesn't know a sex. It doesn't know an identity. It is just, you know, string of digits. There's no difference between a Bitcoin address, like, you know, in America or in Canada or in Venezuela or in North Korea or China or Iran, or it doesn't matter. It is just simple code. So, you know, and it's an inclusive system that anybody can participate in, which, you know, which represents an alternative. So, you know, it kind of came about. Now, one of the next things that we want to talk, I'm just conscious, like, we're halfway through our time here.
Man, I'm here anytime. If you ever want me to come back on, I'll do that too. You know,
we're going to do that, and because I think, you know, I got reached out today by Melanie Ridson from the Western Standard, saying, like, our viewers are concerned that, like, Bitcoin and crypto is kind of a trap, and that it's about, like, you know, globalist agenda of control. can you speak on that? I'm like, yeah, sure, I can speak on that. And it's like, our existing banking system is highly centralized, and this idea of CBDCs, these central bank digital currencies, like they're being kind of mentioned a lot right now,
Yeah,
but
it's concerning.
they're like they're drawing this like similarity to Bitcoin, but the truth of
Yeah.
them is they're not going to be like Bitcoin.
Complete opposite. One
The-
is centralized currency, one is decentralized. But if you don't understand decentralized, then it's difficult to comprehend that, right? Like you and I are, I mean, you much more than I, but I'm a computer techie enthusiast, whatever. Like I've grown up with computers, but trying to talk to a lot of these people that don't have the same background and explaining decentralization, it takes some time. Like I do that with Mark Petroni. We have a segment we call News Talk Crypto. His audience is very much on one side of the political spectrum. The same sort of people that would be reading the Western Standard, trying to explain to them that no, Bitcoin is freedom. And the other phrase they don't understand that I spent a lot of time explaining is pseudo anonymous. And understanding that, yeah, there's a code to a wallet, but you as the wallet holder are anonymous. So, yeah, the balance can be seen, but they have no idea what your wallet address is, and why would you share that with anybody? You know?
right. And I mean, and in Bitcoin, it's pseudonymous, but again, like if you use an exchange, they can kind of connect it. There is a trail. Everything is public, and one of the in a surveillance society, Bitcoin still can, in my opinion, Bitcoin can be, a tool of additional financial surveillance, for people. If you're owning your own keys and you're really tech savvy and privacy centric, you can be, relatively anonymous within it. But highly in like when you're tied to exchanges and when you're making purchases and transfers and their level of kind of transparency to it in a surveillance society like this is an issue because right now, and this is why I would say and I would posit that there's a huge need to apply this technology in government right now for spending because it can allow for some radical transparency and accountability by keeping a public ledger that is immutable, which means you can't change it. So you can't go into the Bitcoin blockchain and delete BJ's Bitcoin. Like doesn't
Yeah,
work like that. You can't
that's
doesn't
right.
if you try to do that, it doesn't work. Like you get rejected by the network. So it has these safeguards in place through incredible engineering and innovation, that really created this new technology that has been likened to gunpowder. Like once gunpowder was invented, you couldn't uninvent it.
That's
So
right.
it's here. It's here. It's not going anywhere. CBDCs, on the other hand, it's like an Amazon dollar. They're going to have the ability, and you might need to sign up with your ID, or it might be issued to you by the government, and they'll be able to give you free money, but they'll also be able to take away your money, as they see fit. And it's really a threat to the existing banks, to be honest, because it's like you're kind of dealing just with the central bank.
That's right.
And there is definitely this push towards it. So I think it's really clear that we don't conflate or confuse Bitcoin with a CBDC or like a Canadian dollar coin issued by the government that's a private ledger. It might be digital, but it's not like digital cash like
That's
crypto
right.
is.
That's right. It's going to be much worse. I mean, imagine you get issued dollars from the government. Let's say it's UBI, right? That's how they're going to distribute UBI. But they tell you your dollars expire at the end of the month. I mean, that's the amount of power that they'll have. They can have money that has an expiration date. So it's really, when you delve into CBDCs, it's really concerning. And the hedge against that is Bitcoin. And luckily, there were some truckers, by the way, who were Bitcoiners before the conference. The Bitcoin guys were telling me they were talking to some of them already held Bitcoin and understood the importance, which was great. And I think it just massively advanced adaptation. I think Pompliano said that Justin Trudeau is the chief marketing officer for Bitcoin. unknowingly, just because of the amount of extreme response from the government has people now looking in that direction. And we know now that there was a massive bank run that the government doesn't want to talk about. That $1.2 trillion was taken out of the Canadian economy immediately. And where I was staying was in a kind of an elderly community, like that neighborhood. So a lot of older people. And my friend told me, going to the bank, she spoke to the tellers a couple of times and asked, this is during the Emergency Measures Act. And the teller said, we have never seen so many elderly people withdraw such huge sums of money, $8,000 at a time, coming in a few times a week, just because they have parents that grew up during the Depression, right?
Mhm.
So they hear the bank is now seizing, and they don't care what your political affiliation is. And which is the other thing that I find I've tried to communicate to people, and you can speak to this. Like we are all in the same position, which is you just to the maximum degree, which we have people in our families that have completely opposing political views. Everybody's family has that. In your scenario, it just happens to be your brother's prime minister, and it's that same thing to the extremes. But what I've tried to communicate to people, one of the things I love about it is, like, I'm not hardened to one side. Like I've always told people, and I use the Scott Adams version, I explained to Michaela Peterson, that I like the objectives and the goals of the left, I like the systems of the right, and I like the freedom of the libertarians. And somewhere I bounce between that triangle, and I think we all do. We're not all just one thing. And what Bitcoin has allowed me, since I've gotten involved in it, is I'm now talking to people. I mean, I've been talking to people in Bitcoin for a couple of years, but it allowed me to finally communicate with people on the complete opposite end of the political spectrum, and allowed us to, on certain issues, to agree to disagree, but we agree on our personal freedom and our monetary sovereignty. So somebody can be as left can be, as right can be, whatever. Yeah, okay, we'll disagree on certain policies and ideas, but at the end of the day, we'll at least be able to talk to each other because Bitcoin's been that common denominator. Has that been your experience?
Oh yeah, I mean, and Bitcoin. Look, I mean, before Bitcoin, yeah, I was working in tech and had really, cool experiences. But once I started getting into Bitcoin, all of a sudden, like, the topics that were being discussed, like you're talking about microeconomics, you're talking about
Yeah.
macroeconomics, you're talking about geopolitics, you're talking about cryptography, security, new system design, systemic transformation, the future of governance. Like it just goes on and on. I remember going to the OECD, like, one of like the big, forums, and like at lunch, like there was some guy from like the central bank of Italy. I just wanted to have a discussion about like, central banks and going up
Uh-huh.
and down, but it was like, that this wasn't exactly finding common ground. It actually resulted in him suggesting that we talk about like something else, to which I suggested the weather, or potentially the local sports team, or
Yeah.
girls. Uh, but anyways,
Awesome.
in these journeys, there's been fantastic kind of explorations that have, and more focused on, what's possible and what can we kind of come and create, and where does this all lead to, and how do we get there, and how do we build it. So and just being able to drop into all sorts of different circles, like from like being like with like the Davos crowd, and talking, like seeing their angle on it, to like the Bohemian spiritual crowd and seeing their whole angle on it, to the hardcore developers, but like what they're building, like the ETH Denver kind of crew, looking at like hacking. I participated in lots of different hackathons as well, like creating and working with teams and exploring about what we can create. At the end of the day, I kind of feel like an artist. I feel we're all artists, and it's up to us to, like, in challenging times, it's create, and it's like unleash that inner artist. And I feel really like we've been pushed by what has taken place, and all the chaos of the last 2 years has created like these conditions for systemic change
Hmm.
and for real innovation. And it's happening in my point. And I would love to. I think we're not going to delve into like the Canada concept because we don't have enough time to give it justice. But let's come back and discuss that at a later date. But if you can come to Bitcoin Miami, it's going to be like, so from the, I guess from like the 4th until the 10th, there's going to be stuff happening all over Miami. 30 plus thousand people are expected to come together, in open airs,
Hmm.
unmasked,
Oh yeah, it's
speaking
beautiful. It's beautiful.
speaking freely,
Yeah.
like connecting in person, human connection quotient very high. And you're going to be speaking there, right?
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking on it's either the 7th or the 8th. I'm going to be on a panel with a couple other people, Francois Pouliard. I can't remember the other two guys. We were just talking, but so many messages and calls. But we're talking about, I'm not sure, I love the title so much, Wartime Bitcoin, because I try to be as much of a pacifist as possible. Hence the reason we tried to go down the direction of peace, love, and unity with the Freedom Convoy. But we're going to be discussing the threats of certain governments that when they get out of control, whether it's because it's intentional or what I tend to think is it's just incompetence. Governments are not competent organizations, and they're always tearing themselves apart from the inside, much like political parties. It's not the one entity that's all unified. It's actually the complete opposite. I'm sure you've had exposure to that your entire life, witnessing it. And so yeah, hopefully we'll be able to, like, I want to get beyond the point of talking to ourselves. And that's why I'm really excited that the headliners are people like Jordan Peterson. Aaron Rodgers was just added yesterday. Yomeni Park is there. Like a lot of people that are not from the Bitcoin world. They're not developers. They're not programmers, which is important. They're going to be leading all the panels. And I need to go. I need to go to a couple of mining panels, and some Lightning panels because I'm really far behind on Lightning, and I need to get up to date because now we know how important it is. But you're right, man. Like it's so unifying because it becomes from I'm a conservative or I'm a progressive towards like, yeah, dude, think a little bit different, but let's talk about Bitcoin, and that is
Mm.
an amazing vibe.
Yeah.
And I
Well, there's
think
a
this
bunch,
is going to
and
be the
even
first Bitcoin.
though there's a bunch of people that are, I'm a Bitcoiner. And
Oh
it's
yeah,
like,
yeah, I know.
yeah.
I
Last.
spoke about that with Brad earlier today, and I mentioned it. I, I mentioned to him that like, is there going to be a point where at some point the people in the crypto space and the people in the Bitcoin space that the adversarialness, that rhetoric will die down. I personally think it's already died down over the past several years.
I think it's a
Um,
misnomer. I think it's like, honestly, there's like a couple characters that have like, these really hardcore views. And I
yeah.
mean, I was there last year. I was wearing a banana suit. We're pushing around a giant speaker with a headset on, giving Doge stickers and giving Dogecoin to everybody. And it's like people love, and honestly, the attendees, they don't know, they don't care. They're not like,
Mhm.
hardcores about it. I think Dogecoin is freaking awesome. It's like a cute intro to a main chain currency. So it's like before like getting about how serious Bitcoin is, like here's Dogecoin, a fun, friendly version that is exactly the same as Bitcoin, works exactly the same way, has some different characteristics, but it's a good little intro to it. And that's why, and it's cute and funny and doesn't have like some of the community kind of hard lines or
Yeah.
divisions. But I'm all about like unity, and I think as part of decentralization is making sure that we don't go to a one world currency, like that we have competition, even if that one world currency is Bitcoin. I count me out, count me out. Like
Yeah.
I'm not.
For me, because I'm not so hardened, and I call myself a intermediate user in communicating to people, especially people of the boomer generation and some Gen Xers. I just got to keep it simple.
Oh
I
yeah,
found,
totally.
I got to
Bitcoin,
just,
agreed.
I first got to get them to understand Bitcoin. That's my MO. And what happened in Ottawa with the convoy, I think, is a great opportunity for all of us to explain the importance of, self-sovereignty and having the separation of money and state, which is where we need to go. I don't think you disagree with me.
I completely agree with you. BJ, that's it for us right
You
now.
got your hard stop now,
I
man.
got my hard stop. I got to get to my wife. We're going on for a walk on the beach
I
in
haven't had
Vermont.
breakfast
It's gonna
yet.
be
It's
amazing.
2 o'clock. So go do your thing. We'll
Really,
continue messaging each
you
other,
as well.
and we'll figure out a time to do this again, man.
I hope to see you in Miami if I
I'm
can.
gonna be there. I'll be there all week, man. I'm gonna be at as
Yeah, I'm
many
not.
events as possible. So I'll message me when you come in, and
I
we'll
don't know
figure
if
out a
I'm
way to
going to
get
be
together.
able to come in yet. I've got this new baby on the way, and we'll see. But
Best way to indoctrinate a
if
baby is their first week of life is to be at the Bitcoin conference.
it wouldn't be my first child to do that, but when we do arrive, I'm hoping that it will be with a honk honk, and I'll leave it at that.
Brother, you're the best, man.
All
Love it.
right, love
Honk
you
honk.
too. Okay, honk honk. Bye, bye.